Hi and welcome to another episode of Top Volts, and today we're going to be looking at the Aston Martin. So this is the Aston Martin DB4 GT, and it's the C68. So this was first released in 1963 on their 4th edition catalogue. There is some great detail to this car. I love the scale. They've got all the bumpers and the lights, like the number plate on the back there. It's all in great proportion, even down to the front. You've got these little spots either side in the grille. It's really nice, a really nice looking car. And this was during the period where I felt like they put a lot of effort into the scale of their cars and the way they look. And this is a really good looking car. It runs quite well as well on the track. This one's developed a little bit of a running problem. I can feel there's a resistance on feels like it's possibly on the pinion or the rear cog. So we'll open this up and actually see what's going on inside there. So they run the RX motor. So we'll have a little look inside and actually see what's going on with this. But it is very stiff. So I'm assuming possibly we've lost a couple of teeth or something in there. But let's open this up and have a little look inside. So this is held together by 3 screws, which go into the upper body shell, which I can show you inside. There's almost like they've used a spring as the thread into the plastic body, which is a great idea, because with the other cars you're screwing straight into a plastic thread. And as one of our watchers on this channel has pointed out to me, that if you wind in to a plastic thread, it's just to wind back slightly until you feel the bite of the thread, and then wind in very carefully, and that way it won't recut the thread again, which is sound advice, and thank you for that. So now we've got those screws out, and then let's just loosen this off. So the springs that I'm talking about are in here. So they look like a thread in there, but when you take these out, they're actually a spring. You can see the end of the spring there, and then they're pressed into the plastic, which is a great idea because it really does work. Overall, the car itself is in good condition, even down to where they've melted the base of the head. That all seems secure. All seems fairly original as well. So that's all great. Let's put that to one side. And now, so there we have the RX motor. All the soldered joints look to be in really good condition. Even on the side, the sheath is all intact. Let me just make sure that's pushed across so it doesn't arc onto the shell, onto the body of the motor. And there seems to be a good amount of spring. There's plenty of meat there on the brushes. So onto the issue we've got here. So what I can see is that the teeth, so the teeth on this rear cog are quite worn. They appear to be lifting, so possibly the mesh isn't quite right. Actually, when I pull a bit of pressure on the side, it meshes much nicer, so it might just be down to worn teeth. So we'll change this rear cog out and put a new one on there. The pinion itself looks to be original and in good condition. The motor at the point of contact could probably do with a clean, and it does look a bit dry, so we'll put a bit of oil in there as well. So first things first, we'll lift this rear axle out, which appears to be quite good. There's not really a lot of muck around there. Just a little bit, some hair there. So we'll get rid of that. That all seems good. So a little bit more hair, if you can see, which is common. You get quite a lot of this hair build up. So I'll get some tweezers on that and we can take that off. So I can hook it there. Yeah, there's quite a bit there. I think we'll get some tweezers on that. All right, perfect. So we do that in a bit. So when I come to change that rear cog, we'll deal with the hair then. Okay, so what we'll quickly do then is we'll clean the pickups, and as I call it, the point of contact with the brushes, and then just give it a little drink of oil. And as I've previously mentioned, what I do like about these RX motors is this hinge point. It's a nice little touch, really, when it comes to the chassis of the car, and it gives you clear access either side, and you know, it enables you to work on it without having to worry about putting the motor down somewhere, and also having to remove the guides, so you don't have to disconnect everything. It is a nice little touch. So we just use a little bit of alcohol solution on the end of a cotton bud, and then we'll place that just on the point of contact, and then we'll just turn the motor. I can just hold that so you can see. And then we just turn that motor. You can see it. You usually get a good amount off there. So just a little bit more. And as I mentioned before, I tend to use alcohol solution because it doesn't leave a residue on the motor or on the contacts. There is other cleaning solutions you can use, but this has always proven quite good for me. I think I've heard of some people using like an acetone or something like that. But I always worry about leaving a residue on this point of contact, which will burn off with running the motor, but it does take the motor a little bit longer to burn that off before it'll, you know, develop up to those sort of 15-16 volts. So we'll just drop a little bit of oil in there. Just straight onto the spine of the motor. And you really don't need to put a lot on there at all. And another bit just by the pinion, and just allow that to turn in and soak into the sponge on the motor. And as you're turning, you can feel the motor freeing up. Okay, that's brilliant. So we'll just put this to one side for a moment. Okay, so I've changed the rear cogs over, which I can show you how I've done that in another video, just with a little tool that I've made up. But you can see the teeth on this are completely shot. They're completely rounded off. So I've put the new rear cog on, but I had to do a little bit of alteration to it. Because the RX motor, the center shaft is quite wide, so I've had to cut a little bit of the rear cog just inside on the tooth side. So I just used the Stanley knife to slice off literally like 0.5 millimeter, then carefully sand off afterwards. And that, using a spare RX motor I had, I was able to offer that in and get it to fit just nice. So we'll put the wheels back on. We'll just slide those back on. Okay, just give that a little push. Brilliant. And we'll just place this back into the car. So lift the motor out the way for this one. place those bearings back into their location. And then when pressing back in, just offer a bit of support from behind. And then when pulling the RX motor in, just carefully wind that in just to get the teeth to mesh just as it goes in. Okay, that's perfect. Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So that's actually working very well. Okay, so we'll put the body shell back on. And similar to the screws into the plastic thread, you want to do the same with this really. It's just find a nice bite on the screw. It should be quite free. You shouldn't really be feeling any resistance at all until you get just to a point where you start to feel resistance, slow up, and then a tiny little bit more. And that's the same on all of them, just a tiny bit more. You really don't need to tighten these up, you know, to a point where you're wailing on those screws, because that just will not help at all. So what we'll do then is we'll place this on the track and just give it a little run up and let that motor just bed itself in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to start the volts low, slowly work our way up, just allow those brushes just to find their ground again. So let's get this going. Okay, so I'll slowly increase. Perfect, that's working great. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you've enjoyed the content and taken something from some of the tips possibly. And just thank you to everybody that's left comments with their tips and advice on not just this car but other cars. Is very much appreciated. As always, any information is great. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.